And now, a collector of people. Ernst Schmiederer.
Talk 49.
Ernst, what is a collector of people?
Let's put it another way. I'm not a collector of people. I'm a collector of stories. So that means I'm a listener. I try to listen to what people are telling me, what they are living, what they experience in life, what their stories are. And I'm collecting their stories, and to collect them, to get them, I need to offer them. I'm the guy who is listening to you.
So to collect people, their stories, you must be a good listener, Ernst.
That's what I'm trying to do. Listening is the first thing. As long as you do not offer listening, the other will not talk about himself. So they need an opportunity to tell their stories, and the opportunity arises only when you give them the possibility to talk about themselves, because that's what's missing in our society. There is not much possibilities for people to talk about themselves. Nobody wants to know who you are as long as you do not do something special. And if you're working for the post office, for instance, the guy behind the counter or the guy who brings your parcel, nobody wants to know who he is. But he has a story too, so I'm trying to get these stories.
How did you get into listening to people and getting their stories, Ernst?
I'm a journalist by profession, so I've been listening professionally for 40 years now. Within the last 10 or 15 years, the interest just grew. I found out that there is not much, there isn't an institution where people could go to tell their stories. And I'm trying to build that institution. So we call it Institut für die Geschichten der Gegenwart, Institute for the Histories, for the Stories of the Presence. And that's what the whole thing is about. We collected about a little bit more than 4,000 handwritten autobiographies or autobiographic sketches. We've published, I think, 17 or 18 or 19 books in between with these stories. So that's the thing. We are not just collecting the stories. We always try to get them out again, to publish them. And why do we publish them? Because we think people should read about other people. So we use these books to buy new stories. Each and every person who gives us her story gets back a lot of stories from us. We do stories by exchanging these books, by exchanging the stories for new stories.
You could say networking stories, couldn't you? Networking stories.
Networking, and if there would be a little bit more money in it, I could even say dealing with stories. But there isn't a lot of money in this.
How do you get so many people to talk to, Ernst? 4,000's a lot of people, isn't it?
Yes, it is a lot. We started with this project like 10 years ago at Blinklicht Media Lab. We started to go into schools and offer our services to teachers, and told them, give us 2 hours with your class, and we show them how to write an autobiographic sketch, an autobiographic story within these 2 hours. And 2 hours in school is 90 minutes de facto. And we set up a workshop to do that in 90 minutes and to get results back within this very short period of time. So after doing that in schools, we started to do that at Volkshochschulen. I'm teaching at the university, at the Sigmund Freud University, collecting my stories there. I'm teaching autobiographical writing with students at the Sigmund Freud University, and that's 100 stories each semester, each year. So it adds up.
Tell me something, Ernst. When you're in schools talking to school kids, how old are these kids roughly? Are they third year, fourth year, sort of 15, 16 or...
We started at the age of 14, and most of them in the beginning, in the first couple of years, were between 14 and let's say 20 years of age. And then we found out, more or less by coincidence, that we started to work a lot with refugees.
Okay.
And this became age difference. So we had people who had children of 10 or 11 years and older ones up to 60, 70 years. So in between, we are working with everybody who wants to work with us.
How do the stories change according to the age of the people who are telling them?
They change with their experiences. You have experienced different things if you're 17, or you care about different things when you are 17 than you do when you are 47, for instance. So people have different problems, have different concerns, have different environments, and that's what makes a story.
When you're talking to refugees and other people, do you notice a difference, a priority difference between, say, what I would tell you, I've got absolutely no problems, and the stories the refugees would tell you?
Yeah, sure. There will be differences because you are not a refugee. That's not part of your history. That's not part of your experiences. You just mentioned an important word. You said you don't have any problems. It's not that the story consists only of problems. A good story, as you know, is talking about stories and writing stories. A good story always consists or starts at the point where something is coming in between your plans. So your plan does not make a good story, but what happened to your plans, that makes the story. So, and in this sense, you have a story to tell as everybody else has a story to tell. Each and every one of us had something come between our plans. And for a refugee, it's obviously most of them had the plan to live where they had to flee from in between. So that's what came in between.
Is there anything these stories do have in common? For example, people meet people along the way. What's the big thing that affects people's lives? Is it people or events?
It's obviously both. What brings them together? Here, for instance, this brings them together. These are two books with about 400 stories from refugees, 400 autobiographic sketches, autobiographic stories from refugees we collected mostly from 2015 on. And the books were published, I think, last year or the year before that. I don't remember exactly. And as I said, this is about 400 stories, and we have a shortened version of these 400 stories. The title of the book is Wir, hier und jetzt. So a friend of mine one day showed up and said, here, I have a gift for you. I collected each and every sentence that starts with wir, each and every sentence that starts with here, and each and every sentence that starts with jetzt. And then she made a poem out of these sentences. So we have an abbreviated form of these 400 stories, which is a poem of about like 1 or 2 pages only. And you can read it like a book because each sentence is from a different story. So you read within one poem from 400 people.
What are the main similarities from the refugee stories?
The main similarity in my case, in my working with them, is that none of them has the same mother tongue than I do. So they do not speak German. Nearly all of them, like 97 or 98% of these 400 stories, were written in German. So this is something they have in common. They are trying to learn a language they did not know about a couple of years ago, and they have to learn it now, and they learn it by writing about themselves.
These interviews with the refugees, you held them a few years ago now. Do you still have contact with these people, and what's happened to them?
Yeah, with some of them I have contact. Others have been deported in between, so that's a big problem in Austria now. People are being deported all the time, and that's a real pity, and it's unbelievable and unbearable. I wrote a little book a couple of months ago. Why we can't treat strangers like enemies? Warum wir Fremde nicht wie Feinde behandeln dürfen? Why we can't treat strangers like enemies? This grew out of the stories that I collected, because I met so many people, and I met a lot of them who have been deported in between. And I have the feeling we have to fight against this. We have to show it. We have to talk about it, and we have to blame the people who are doing this. In this case, it's our government. It's absolutely unbearable. It's, by the way, not good for us ourselves. It's not good for our society. It's not good for Austria. It's not good for our heart. So we should open up. To the contrary, we should show hospitality. That's what we should do, instead of deporting these mostly poor people.
How can one get this book, Ernst? Because this is a book that everybody should read, if they've got a conscience, that is, and I'm sure many people do have a conscience. Where can we get this book, and who publishes it?
You can either go to your bookstore and order it and ask for it there, or you can just go to our bookshop, to our online bookshop, which is shop.gegenwart.org.
Okay, shop.gegenwart.org. O-R-G. Okay, Ernst.
Shop.gegenwart.org.
Ernst, what do you get from all of this interviewing and the production of these very fine works? What sort of satisfaction do you get from it?
I have the feeling I'm immersed not only by stories, but also by people. There's a lot giving back. I get a feeling for how people are living nowadays. I get a feeling for our presence. I get a feeling for what people love, what they are fighting for, what they are suffering under. So I get a feeling for people, I get a feeling for society, and that's a lot. You wouldn't get it without trying to find it in so many different cases. So I'm privileged somehow.
Ed, what's the future for you and your project? Any more books coming up? Any more interviews?
Yes, there's a lot more books coming out. We just did a book about lockdown with about 120 students from Handelsakademie in the 20th district. Berichte aus dem Hausarrest. We did that in June. It was the first lockdown in Austria. We asked these 120 students to write their stories. We are trying to do the same now with teachers and get a book with stories from teachers out of the second, the third, and maybe or probably the fourth lockdown, which I'm expecting in March. So, and we are trying to do a lot of other books. I did a book a year ago about one refugee who had been working with us a lot, Navid is gone, it says. He was in Austria for 5 years. He worked a lot with us in our project, and he had to flee to France because he was not allowed to stay anymore here in Austria. He should have been deported to Afghanistan, and he tried to avoid that by going further to France, where he's now living. So I'm trying to keep doing what I did in the last couple of years. I'm trying to get stories. I'm trying to get these stories published in books. and I would be very happy if I could get my team back into Blinklicht Media Lab. We had to more or less close down most of our operations with the first lockdown in April. I could not afford to pay my friends and the team any further, so I had to let them go. And I would be very happy if I could afford to employ them again. I would be very happy if maybe through your thing here on the radio, we find 1 or 2 millionaires who are eager to finance a project like ours. No, I don't know. As soon as all these lockdowns are behind us, we need to set up shop again and start from where we left before. And until then, we are trying to continue to survive somehow. I don't know yet how that will turn out.
Maybe even if it's just a very small thing, what about if many of us bought some of your books? Would that help?
That will definitely help. So please go to shop.gegenwart.org and shop those books as much and as many as you want and can. They will be sent to you free of charge.
That's very, very nice. Ernst, any other great wishes for the future?
Wishes for the future? Yeah, I'd like to see a government who knows what it is doing. I'd like to see better times for all of us. I'd like to see Austria as a hospitable country. I'd like to see Europe that's proud of being Europe and that's proud of being open and hospitable to people from all over the world. So I'd like to see better times, and I think we could find these better times in doing stuff for it and not letting things just go.
Most of us would agree with you there. Europe should be proud of being Europe. And of course, it's all down to better times.
It is, yes, Nigel.
Right. Ernst Schmiederer, thank you very, very much for talking to Talk 49. Thank you very much, Ernst.
Thank you so much, Nigel, for having me. See you soon.
See you soon. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye.
Talk 49.